Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Carly Rae Jepsen titled Emotion. I did not like Call Me Maybe in the slightest. Believe it or not, I wasn't miserable during the summer of 2012 because of that fact. Well, it's because 2012, pretty damn great year for pop music, especially on the charts. And I had plenty of other great songs to keep me busy across pretty much the rest of the year. Even in Canada, where that song's ubiquity was even harder to escape. But yeah, Call Me Maybe by Carly Rae Jepsen did very little for me, and the overblown hype behind that song made things all the worse. I mean, I talked a little bit about dramatic stakes when I reviewed Casey Musgraves' pageant material a couple days ago, and the complete lack of stakes made the overly cutesy immaturity of Call Me Maybe a little bit too precious, even for me. The fact that Carly Rae was deliberately playing up adolescence in her image despite being 26 in 2012, yeah, that kind of struck me as very cynical and really did rub me the wrong way. So okay, why the hell am I reviewing her newest album? Well, despite not exactly being a fan of Call Me Maybe, I do like Carly Rae Jepsen. I think she's a pretty decent pop starlet, especially for her knack in crafting a very sticky melodic hook. And when she's on her game, she can definitely deliver. Hell, I place Good Time, the duet she did with Owl City, as an honorable mention of my top 10 hit songs of 2012, and I stand by that. Coupled with the fact that she does have some relatably attractive charisma, works with producers like Mariana's Trench frontman Josh Ramsey, and she does have primary writing credits on nearly all of her songs, means I do give her a fair amount of credit, even though I do find her technical songwriting to be the biggest point where she can consistently slip up. And look, even though I Really Like You might have one of the most completely asinine choruses in most recent pop music history, I can't help but find more things to actually like about that song every time I listen through it. So I just said, what the hell, and I picked up Emotion. Is it any good? Well, actually, yeah, it really is. And it's a little perplexing as to why, because on the surface, Carly Rae Jepsen's Emotion isn't all that different from the new album from, say, Hilary Duff, Breathe In, Breathe Out, modern female pop artists who don't have a ton of strident vocal personality that's all that unique, and play the whole girl next door sound when they do have it, and yet are very solid songwriters in their own right. So what sets Carly Rae Jepsen above and beyond? Well, call an example of better producers, more energy, slightly stronger hooks, and instrumentation that might call back to the past, but does it with a level of authenticity and great production that recalls more of Taylor Swift's 1989, its appropriation of 80s sounds and styles. And arguably, I say that Carly Rae Jepsen does it a bit better. So, okay, now that you're all getting your pitchforks and torches, let me explain. I think the best place to start would be with Carly Rae Jepsen's vocal performance. Now, my previous big issue here is a lack of real dramatic range. She played girlish exuberance pretty well, but beyond that, she didn't really show off a lot of unique personality to really set her apart. But the big advantage she brings to the table on this record is versatility, and in a way that doesn't so much imitate other styles as just show off more dimension with her own style. Yeah, her vocals on some songs do owe a debt to the softer side of mid-80s Janet Jackson and especially Madonna, but there's a feeling of innocence and heartfelt earnestness that doesn't so much bother with the image of it all, and I really did appreciate that. And what tracks like the gentle R&B cooing of all that to the anxious resignation of Your Type, it shows off a surprising amount of emotive range. And the one place where I think she does kind of slip up a bit is on Warm Blood, which demands a certain sultriness to her delivery that I think is completely outside her dramatic wheelhouse, but she does put forward a valiant effort. I can kind of respect it, and it's still a good song. And it definitely helps that Carly Rae Jepsen's songwriting has a certain personality on its own, even in finding ways to work out some of the awkward clumsiness to its advantage. And the funny thing is that seems to be a purely technical issue, because there's a fair amount of actual nuance in these lyrics that did really catch me off guard. Take the lead-off single, I Really Like You. Yeah, I've already mentioned a number of times how dumb that chorus is, but the overall sentiment of being on the precipice of being in love but not being quite there, that's a potent one, and the lyrics play to that pretty well. Granted, much of this album plays that yearning infatuation from the straightforward and fairly well executed Run Away With Me and Let's Get Lost, to the excellent balance, all that, to the resignation of Your Type, where she's trying to hold back her own feelings, barely on the edge there, as she realizes that she's just not her crush's type, and yeah, having some maturity to deal with that does execute well here. Hell, while I think that Warm Blood plays things a little bit too cute, and she doesn't have the sultriness to make even that work, the writing still conveyed the anxiety that comes from nearly revealing all dark secrets when you're that infatuated with somebody. Granted, tracks like Gimme Love and Making the Most of the Night do repeat the whole simple love song formula to diminishing returns, but thankfully Carly Rae Jepsen does have a little bit more in her back pocket, and honestly it's a little bit hit and miss. The title track is a weird one for me, one trying to remind an ex of everything that he's lost by dumping her, and regardless of who dumped who, it could have been her who dumped him, I'm still left wondering why she doesn't just move on here. Boy Problems has the opposite issue, where she has plainly moved on from this breakup, and yet she's annoyed with her friend talking about a boy issue. Shouldn't she be past that? At least she gets that maybe she and her best friend aren't in that sort of best of places with each other, and I completely get being exasperated with friends who just go on and on about breakups, but still, the song doesn't quite land as well as it should. The breakup track When I Needed You is much stronger, at least lyrically, as she admits that she wishes she could have changed for this guy, but considering that he never gave her the time that she needed, she doesn't have the same problem just walking away, and that shows a maturity I can respect. That leaves LA Hallucinations, a track about breaking out of the whole showbiz fairy tale for something real. And look, I know how we all should hate BuzzFeed and TMZ for obvious reasons, and most of us do, but they're symptoms of the larger celebrity-obsessed problem in LA. They wouldn't exist without that. And so it seems a little bit odd that Carly Rae would single them out in this song. I appreciate it, I can appreciate the bars, but honestly, they just feel a little out of place. But really, the element I want to talk about most is the instrumentation. And while people said that Taylor Swift's 1989 was a love letter to the 80s, Emotion is a much more focused tribute, specifically to the gleaming, punchy, mostly overproduced era of late 80s dance pop and even R&B. And this is where Carly Rae Jepsen's strongest asset comes into play, a focus on ridiculously catchy instrumental melodies that remain prominent in the mix beyond just her vocal track. The opening song, Run Away With Me, begins with a horn line that anchors the entire song. And while it's not quite as bright, and it feels a little bit more compressed as the saxophone that sneaks into Let's Get Lost, it's given enough presence to stick out in an expansive mix that gives it a lot of room to breathe, even as the low-end synth and drums give the song a pretty propulsive groove to it. And yeah, sure, there's reverb over everything, but the mix depth and exceptionally strong balance, courtesy of Ariel Reichstag, Josh Ramsey, and a host of other sharp producers, allows the songs to never lose that melodic momentum, which is hugely important. Same case for I Really Like You, especially with the insane earworm of the hook. It might not have the greatest chorus, but seriously, on a melodic level, I really dig that song. And that's before we get to the stripped back, gorgeous mid-tempo ballad, all that, with a great textured bass against those shimmering synths that might have enough modern elements to not feel imported straight from late 80s R&B. Honestly, the song sounds great. The bass-heavy rollick of Boy Problems, the jittery low-end synth of Your Type that's supplemented with these gleaming keys over one of the better choruses on the album, or the buzzy synths against the surprisingly punchy percussion on LA Hallucinations. That sounds like what a modern interpretation of an early 90s Madonna track should sound like. Now, there are two things there the production does kind of work against Carly Rae. Firstly, some of the underweight melodic fragments that pepper some of the more minimalist tracks like the title track or Gimme More or Let's Get Lost. Although in the last case, the chorus morphs into this groove that recalls more New Jack Swing than anything else. And it's a great fit. Honestly, wish why it hasn't come back yet. A more objectionable case is some of the more aggressively annoying part of the late 80s pop, and that's the stock Aitken and Waterman-inspired overloading of the mix in terms of its balance. Yeah, I know that it gives a lot of space for the melodies to breathe, but that's not exactly an excuse to overload the mix on tracks like the chorus of Making the Most of the Night or When I Needed You, the former which is likely the least likable song on this album. And with Boy Problems proves that Sia's writing probably isn't a good fit for Carly Rae Jepsen, or a good fit for anybody else except Sia and maybe Rihanna. But okay, putting all of that aside, I really enjoyed Emotion. Yeah, it's lightweight pop that operates with a pretty simple formula, but I've always said there's a way to do that right, and I can appreciate that. And Carly Rae Jepsen brings enough personality, energy, and strikingly good production to make it work, especially if you're a fan of the late 80s like I mostly am. Thus for me, and believe me, I'm as surprised as anyone, I'm giving this a very light 7 out of 10, and a recommendation if you want some damn solid pop music. I might not have liked Call Me Maybe, but Emotion proves that Carly Rae Jepsen has some real chops behind her to follow it up. Let's just hope the charts actually give her the real space to reward it. I hope they do. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation or anything else, any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Just a friendly reminder, on July 10th, I'm going to be covering an album from 2014 that you guys are requested for my 2-year anniversary. Leave your comments in the below, tagged as 2014 with an album that I might have already covered, or one that you want me to cover fresh and new that I might have missed last year. Keep in mind, I am tracking if you're going to spam my comments. Keep that in mind. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.